Okay, is this on? I just turned on the Zoom function and I am waiting for others to join up. It is exactly 8 p.m. Central Time, so I expect others to show up any minute now. I just hope some people didn't get confused by the time differences.
Hello. Is this the place for the ex-religious meeting?
Yes, it is. You appear to be the first person beside myself to show up. I guess we won't get that many people.
Hey, I'm here too.
Ah, now I see more than a dozen pics popping up. Good, we can all proceed. Let us start with introductions. I am Dale Husband, known across the internet as the Honorable Skeptic, and I am the organizer and moderator of this special Zoom group which is devoted to people that have previously been members of a religion and have since left it. I was originally a Southern Baptist and later became a member of the Baha'i faith and ultimately left it to reject all God-centered religions. I am now a Unitarian Universalist and consider myself atheist. Mrs. Sandy Smith, since you popped up first, please proceed with your introduction.
Thank you. I am the currently serving mayor of a small town in East Texas I and my children have been living in since we moved here about 15 years ago. I was born in Oklahoma City and my parents were Christians, more specifically mainline Protestants, often attending Methodist or Episcopal churches. As I grew up, I found myself questioning my religion, especially after noticing how hypocritical many of my relatives seemed to be. And eventually my own readings of the Bible made me conclude its stories were just a form of mythology, no better than those of other ancient peoples like the Greeks and the Babylonians. So I became atheist. Then as an adult, I met Rich Smith, who would become my first husband, and I learned he had also become atheist as a teen, so we could relate to each other. Shortly before we married, we came out as atheists to our families. And to my dismay, most of them turned against us, calling me and Rich traitors to God and our families. We were isolated from the very people we thought loved us. Things got even worse when Rich and I later divorced, and so I took our 2 children with me to live in the town I'm at now. I wanted to start a new life, and for several years my children and I lived quietly, minding our own business. But when my daughter Debbie was 13, she and her best friend Carrie, who like Debbie was an atheist, found themselves subjected to attempts by their English teacher to indoctrinate them with Christian values, which included a dose of homophobia. Since Debbie was lesbian too and Carrie had lesbian mothers, they felt violated by the teacher, and so they fought back at the discrimination. And they won.
Okay, I am seeing several of you wanting to speak next, so Lucy Sims, it is your turn.
Thank you. I was born in Boston and I was raised in a family of Jehovah's Witnesses. My father disappeared when I was 8, making me think he had died, and I only learned recently that he left us because he rejected the cult and my mother refused to leave it with him, so they split. Then when I was a teen I realized I was a lesbian. My mother and sister tried to force me to date boys, and when I refused, they called me a pervert and kicked me out of their home when I turned 18. For nearly a year I was all alone, disfellowshipped and shunned by the other witnesses, struggling constantly to make ends meet and even considering suicide, until I met Jessica and she finally showed me what genuine, unconditional love was about. She literally saved my life. We then married and had our daughter Carrie, and then in 2020 we left Boston to start a new life in Texas, settling in the same town Sandy Smith is mayor of now.
Okay, thanks. The one in the yellow blouse that looks Hispanic, your turn.
Me? Okay, but I am actually a Native American. My name is Carla Jenkins and I am the English teacher Sandy spoke of earlier. Ironically, my attempts to convert Debbie and Carrie to Christianity resulted in me eventually becoming atheist like them after Sandy showed me how messed up the Bible could be. And I actually became a better person after my deconversion.
Thanks. Now the Asian girl in pink, what's your story?
My name is Laura Park and I grew up in the same town that Mrs. Smith, Mrs. Sims, and Miss Jenkins come from, and I was even a member of Miss Jenkins Baptist Church. When I was 14 I came out as a lesbian, and that tore my parents apart, because my father rejected me and my mother took my side, so they divorced. My mother and I later left the town so I could start a career in Hollywood as an actress.
So, Miss Park, like Lucy Sims, you had to leave your original religion because of you being lesbian, right?
Well, I didn't so much leave my religion as the church I was a member of left my religion. Which blew my mind at the time, but it turned out for the best.
I remember when my wife Jessica, Sandy, and our daughters went to the church to speak directly to the people there. We simply told the truth. About the Bible, about how we saw Christianity and God, and about ourselves. And we expected to get thrown out on our asses for our trouble. So the vote instead to change the religious allegiance of the church itself was one hell of a shock.
There were people who came to me after that incident, and they would say things like, "You and your children are such lovely people. It never occurred to us that you had valid reasons to be atheist. We assumed you were just hating God, and we couldn't understand why. Now we do."
Hating God? More like hating liars who claim to speak for God. If people would stop confusing their bigoted opinions with the so-called Word of God, most of the crap we see in religion wouldn't be an issue. I see more people want to speak. The middle-aged couple, are you both Hispanics?
Oh, us? I'm white and my wife is Persian. We are Daniel and Maria Hudson.
Oh, awesome. So when is your band coming back to Texas?
We will discuss that later.
Can we just stay on topic?
Yeah, let's talk about your former religions.
Like Sandy Smith, I was raised in a mainline Protestant faith, Lutheran to be more precise. I quit my religion for much the same reasons she did. Plus, as a scientist, I have to deal with reality in my work, and there is no place for religious beliefs there, so why bother having them in my personal life?
And as for me, I came from Iran and was originally a Baha'i. As an adult, I realized the current leadership of the so-called Baha'i faith was illegitimate, not based on the actual teachings of Baha'u'llah, the founder of the faith, at all. When I tried to convince others of what I knew, I was cast out as a heretic. Daniel then converted me to atheism before we got married. All 3 of our children were raised as atheists. We all are members of a Unitarian Universalist church in Los Angeles.
And I am connected with them because their daughter Suzanne is my love partner.
Okay, so who is next? The freckled girl in green, what's your story?
My name is Penny Bentley, and I live in the same town as Mrs. Smith, the mayor, and Mrs. Lucy Sims. I was raised Catholic and have recently left the Catholic Church after deciding its teachings and practices just don't make sense. I now consider myself agnostic.
Likewise, my wife Bella and I were also raised in the Catholic Church, and we were even married in the church, but after hearing from Penny, we also decided to quit. Bella and I are currently attending the Unitarian Universalist Church in the town, but we are not yet members.
Plus, I work as a waitress and manager under Lucy Sims at her restaurant. Eric and I haven't decided what our religion should be yet. We are still exploring our options.
And who else hasn't been heard from? The old black man, it's your turn.
My name is Daniel Gordon and I live in Nashville. I am the father of Lucy Sims. When I was a child, my mother and I were converted to the Jehovah's Witness cult, but as an adult I left it and in the process lost my wife and 2 daughters, and I only recently reconnected with Lucy and got to know her own 2 daughters, Carrie and Vicky. I am a convert to Judaism.
Grandfather, is that really you? I'd love to meet you sometime. And who are you? Oh, sorry. I am Scott Miller, the son of Victoria Miller, one of Daniel Gordon's daughters. Lucy Sims is my aunt. I live in Los Angeles, and I am another ex-Jehovah's Witness. For now, I keep my deconversion a secret from my parents. Thank you. I see one more waving her hand to speak. The girl in red, what's your story?
My name is Whitney Owen, and I live in the same town in Texas many of the others do. I was originally Baptist and was even the granddaughter of Reverend Dave Owen, who was pastor of the church in the town that later became Unitarian Universalist. I am now atheist.
Thank you. I think that is everyone now.
Excuse me, am I connected now? Is this the ex-religious discussion group?
Yes, it is. And you are late. When I say come in at 8 p.m., I mean that and not later.
Dale, don't be rude. That's my sister-in-law, Tara Sims. And why do you appear to be in a hospital room? What happened?
I'm sorry. My daughter Helen and I were crossing the street together when we were struck by a speeding car. I was able to shield Helen with my body, so she wasn't badly hurt, but my left leg was shattered. The driver that hit us was running from the police and is now in jail.
My apologies, then. So can you tell us your story? Tara?
I was born in Texas, in a town about 100 miles from that of Lucy Sims. I was raised Catholic, but as a teen I went through a rebellious phase so severe I was jailed a couple of times and finally left home, because my father was abusive to me. I blamed my parents being Catholic for their attitude, and that led me to seek alternatives. I decided to become pagan, completely rejecting any form of Christianity, and then joined the Unitarian Universalists after seeing how they included pagans in their membership. That's how Lucy and I got together, as fellow UUs. I eventually moved to Boston and then married Jonathan Sims. He was raised atheist, but we both consider ourselves pagan UUs now.
I am curious. Why would anyone of Christian background become pagan? I became Jewish because at least I could still believe in the same God that Christians do and not have to deal with the nonsense associated with so much of Christianity. Judaism is the original faith that the other monotheist religions are descended from.
My grandfather taught me and others that Jews were indeed the chosen people of God until 33 AD, but that ended when they rejected Jesus as their Messiah, and so the Christians became the true believers and Jews became infidels.
That's impossible. The Messiah was supposed to be a conquering king, like that of his ancestor David. Jesus being a wandering rabbi who was condemned for blasphemy and then crucified met none of those requirements clearly spelled out by the prophets among the Jews. So the Messiah has not come yet, though with Israel being established in the Jews' ancestral homeland, that may set the stage for the Messiah to finally come.
With all due respect, sir, I cannot accept a state that can only exist by displacing and discriminating against another people, like the Palestinians. Look who's talking. You appear to be white, so unless you are a Native American like me, that's exactly what your white ancestors did to mine. To this day, we suffer from the consequences of past aggressions.
As do African Americans. Like you, Father. Aren't most Jews white? As both a black person and a Jew, you are a minority here in the USA. Even in Israel, you'd still be part of a minority. And I myself am black, a woman, a lesbian and an atheist. So I have 4 reasons to feel marginalized. But as a Unitarian Universalist, I believe in the inherent worth and dignity of all people, period. I must therefore insist on being equal with all others.
And I am white, male, of Protestant background, straight, and cisgender, so I am extremely privileged. But my being a Baha'i in the past and atheist now also enables me to understand what being part of a minority is like. Plus, I am of a working class background. And workers everywhere should be fighting for their rights, regardless of their race, religion, gender or sexuality. And yet so many impoverished idiots side with their own rich oppressors. Because those oppressors are white or Christian like them. It's so stupid.
Dale, it's because many Americans still believe in the idea of social mobility, that if you work hard enough, you may someday become highly successful and rich yourself.
Ha 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 ha. Well, that has never happened to me, so I have no reason to believe in that concept. Why am I not rich yet? The system is rigged so that hard work only makes rich people richer. Not me. Capitalism 101.
Dale, just because it has not happened to you doesn't mean it can't happen to anyone. That's a fallacy. My second husband Steve came from a working class background and he became rich. When he was 20 he won $50,000 by playing the lottery and he invested all that money while continuing to work for a living. Today he is worth over $200 million and no longer has to work for a living.
But doesn't that prove my point? Steve made most of his fortune through investments, and when you profit from investments in corporations, that extra money comes from the blood, sweat and tears of workers. Steve got rich off the work of others, not his own hard work. How can that be justified?
Steve uses his wealth to help others. For example, my daughter worked for a modeling agency in Dallas, but she felt mistreated there. When she complained about the matter, she was fired. In response, Steve bought out that agency, rehired Debbie, and then they reformed the agency to treat its models better. As a result of the modeling agency's good reputation, it is now more profitable than ever.
Steve also gave me money so I could install a security system at my restaurant. As a result, I was able to prevent the restaurant being destroyed by arson later. For those reasons, Sandy and I both consider Steve to be a hero.
Very well, I concede to your points. Not all rich people are scumbags. Just the overwhelming majority.
Hello, is this the ex-religious discussion group?
Yes. And you are?
Jack Watson. I live in Tulsa. I was raised in a Christian family.
Jack manages a nightclub that is owned by Steve. And its previous owner was my first husband, Rich Smith. Like Steve, Rich made a lot of money with investments. And so do I now.
Mrs. Smith, didn't you and Steve just get divorced? That's what I heard yesterday at the restaurant.
Bella, don't be rude.
Yeah, that's really not anyone else's business.
It's okay, yes. Steve and I did decide to end our marriage because of my being mayor of this town, and thus I was no longer living with him in Tulsa. We are both moving on with our lives, and that's just how it is. Dale, I've been reading your blog and I am curious about this concept you invented called spiritual orientation. Can you explain it to us?
Sure, it's really based on my understanding of Unitarian Universalist ideals. Just as different people may have various sexual orientations, so likewise they may have different spiritual orientations. In both cases, it is not a matter of choice. Most people have a neutral spiritual orientation and they uncritically accept and follow whatever religion their parents believe in, but otherwise are apathetic about religion. But if a person does have a spiritual orientation and it is different from the religion of their parents, they may feel discomfort in their parents' faith, and so they eventually leave it to find another. Or none at all, perhaps. In my case, my spiritual orientation is humanist. I cannot believe in any God-centered religion, and so I am atheist. I think most of us have that same orientation, but someone like Mr. Gordon has a Jewish spiritual orientation, while Tara Sims would have a pagan one.
I'm not really sure I can agree with your assumptions, but I can respect your opinion.
Anyway, back to Jack Watson. You said you were raised in a Christian family. So what happened?
Well, my mother dying of cancer caused me to lose what little faith I had, but before that, my grandmother was a huge fan of Oral Roberts and sent his ministry over $10,000. Money that could have been used to later treat my mother's cancer. Damn that Oral Roberts. Even as a teen, I knew he was a fraud, but my grandmother wouldn't listen to us. I hope there's a hell for him to burn in now that he is dead.
Wow, tell us how you really feel. Well, it is almost 9 p.m. and so it is time for us to end this discussion and shut down the Zoom app. Thanks to everyone for coming to attend this event.
It was good seeing you again, Dale.
Same. Good night to everyone.
Hold on. I was wanting to get grandfather's number so he and I could talk later.
Scott, I will send you a text message with his number after I get off this group.
And with that, I bid you all farewell.